Hey folks, Steve here with another special Axis Empires Ultimate Edition video for you. In this video, we're going to start the Fall of France training scenario. This is the last training scenario for Totalkrieg, and focuses on, well, the Fall of France. Now, this is coming off of our training scenario for Barbarossa, and despite some bumps in the road of me making sure I'm interpreting the rules correctly and remembering to apply them in the right situations, I think I learned a lot from that scenario. And now we're going to reverse the clock here a little bit and do this one. Now, this is a later training scenario because it involves a bit more of the mechanics than just the ground warfare of Barbarossa. Much easier to focus on land combat, HQs, and all of that, where this scenario, while the invasion of France may be a bit more mundane like Barbarossa, we're going to have to deal with the taking of Norway, and that involves a mixture of the both air and sea support markers to represent the sort of combined arms naval aspects of the war. So it's a little more intensive, a wider spread of mechanics that we have to consider. As well as some more of the political rules around minor countries. And we have the combined for game purposes Belgium-Holland minor country that currently sits with a Western influence marker. Well, will be, as the Germans invading there and pushing onward. So first real good opportunity to be using British Commonwealth and French units in the game, which is good to see, and everything is very neat and tightly packed here in this scenario. I do wonder if it's going to feel a little bit more like the Poland scenario, where there's only so many places to go, and it could lead to routing units being pushed through the locations that we'd like to take. It's really hard to say exactly how all this will play out. Now, this is another 5-turn scenario. We start in March, April of 1940, and then the game ends at the end of the July-August turn 1940. So another 5 turns, though a bit more constrained in terms of what we have on the board to work with. Like the previous scenario, there are cards, but they've been pre-designated. We're going to have 2 turns of spring, so the first card for each faction will be around for 2 turns, and then the second card will be around for 3 turns and are played during the summer months. So the by scenario stipulation, the Allies have Commonwealth support, and then we'll be eventually playing here the Dial plan. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. So kind of a straightforward set of cards. The Germans have Operation Visserobung. Butchering that as well, I'm quite sure. The invasion of Denmark and Norway, so we have to be dealing with that, and then they're going to switch to the case yellow card, which has a lot of special things to it in the rulebook, which we'll look at in time in this video series. So just a quick thing, I'm probably going to play through this pretty quickly. I don't know that I want to show every die roll, every movement, every combat, but when we encounter new mechanics that we've not encountered before, and I need to talk through those, that's probably where we're going to spend the most time. So, you're not going to see the die roll, the maneuvers around Paris or anything like that. I'm probably going to kind of move quickly through those things, but when we need to describe the invasion and the beachhead mechanics and all of that, I'll try to do my best to cover those specific new things that we're going to need to concern ourselves with. So yeah, this will be another brand new thing here to get us off to a good start. Let's see if there's anything else of great concern here. There's not a lot of support markers on the Allied side. So basically, the Commonwealth has a surface fleet. They've got an air force. That's about it, and some troop convoys. They're eventually going to get a carrier reinforcement for next turn, which may help them out a lot. And then the Germans have subs. They also have Air Force markers and the troop convoy. I think their 3 Air Force markers will make a huge difference here, but we're going to have to use them carefully, I think, generally speaking. And then let's see what else. Oh, the victory conditions. This is actually pretty important. So the VP marker starts on the Allied Crusade side, and for all game accounting, because Metz is actually, and I'll take the units off so you can see this a bit better. You can see it's gray colored. This is considered like a victory point objective the Germans ought to own or should own, and by virtue of them not owning it, they're actually in the hole on victory points. So that is why it's technically Allied Crusade for the start here. So if I try to look at, like, I need to double check here, like, how's this all spread out? Because I think there's a couple more that are like that, but it's really off map purposes. So we're the Allied Crusade markers in the 1 victory point space. I would show that, but it's a pretty straightforward looking track, so I don't want to bother moving the camera around too much. But basically, the Germans, to win, the Germans have to take more than just Belgium, Holland, and Paris. They actually need to hit multiple locations and get really as much as they can, because it's not enough just to shift the Allied Crusade marker to 0 VP. We actually have to push it positive in the Germans' direction enough that we flip the counter to the Axis tide side. Now, this would be, if you're curious, you can check the core game rules. The victory conditions section of the rules near the beginning of the rulebook kind of talks this through. Like, you can have the Axis be positive on victory points, but still not have moved not flipped the marker from Allied Crusade, which is a little funky. But for the purposes of this scenario, what it does mean is, to win, the Germans are going to have to get Oslo. They're going to have to get Antwerp, Brussels. They're going to have to get Paris at the very least. And then, if they can crack their way into Metz, I think they may need to do that as well. And Metz has the Maginot Line Fortress stuff, so we're going to have to figure out what to do with that. I will need to double check the victory hex counting of the situation, but that's what's driving that. So I think even when you start the Grand Campaign game in 1937, the Axis is in the hole on victory points, because some of these gray hexes are actually under control of the Allies, which makes it so that the Germans are going to have to actually declare war on somebody and make headway here. So that might be a little tricky to make sure I'm counting everything right for that. I'm a little worried, but I think it just mathematically works out to be, we have to go into Norway, we have to take the Low Countries, we have to get into Paris. I think if I did all those things with or without Metz, I'd throw my hands up and say, well, it's close enough for my thought process. We'll see what other things pop up in the midst of play. I'm sure I'm going to uncover or come across things that will be surprises, because I just don't know the way all these things kind of work together. There may be things I don't quite understand. I've not fully processed the case yellow rules, for instance, so we'll kind of get to that when the time comes. But as it stands, even right now, I think this should make for an interesting exercise. I know that in, say, like World in Flames, it is pretty complex to do the Denmark-Norway thing. Like, you have to know how to do it, and you need to learn how to do it and do it efficiently. And you can really screw it up if you're a new player and don't know what you're doing. So I'm coming into this very cautiously. Like, you might think, invading Poland is really easy, and maybe it is in many games. Trying to do this combined, naval airdrop set of stuff, which we're going to need to do to get into Oslo, I think. That's really a highlight here, something that is going to force us to learn those mechanics, right? And we do have the relevant units in our force pool for airdropping and all that good stuff. So we should be able to follow through over these first 2 turns, getting into Denmark and Norway. Then maybe, I'm not sure exactly what the order of operations will be, but we'll do that. We'll get into Low Countries. We'll be doing the diligent fighting. And there's not that many, reinforcements that are going to be coming in that are going to really shake up the game situation, except maybe that carrier unit. So this should be a pretty straightforward scenario. Anyway, that's the intro, guys. So let me take another look around the map. I'm going to start looking at the Axis. Well, we'll do the seasonal victory phase, I guess. There's not going to be much use in doing that, but that'll help me double check. And then we'll get into the Germans playing the Operation Weisserbung card, and we'll play through that. So really quick, I did want to show, I realize this might have been confusing to explain, so it would be better just to show it. So I am right, the victory situation is right now, it's basically -1. Because the Allies hold Metz, which is a gray strategic hex, the Allied Crusade victory point level is 1 BP due to -1 here. It's not a direct equivalence from the Axis box to the Allied boxes. So that's 3 to 5 positive for Axis. It's 0 to -4 for the Allies. So just note that difference. So what will need to happen here is, let's say we take, as the Germans, Oslo, Brussels, and Paris. Let's say Metz holds out. Well, that will shift this to basically a +2. So as I make the adjustment here, boom. It's still +2, right? But it's current side, and this doesn't flip. It stays on the Allied Crusade marker until the Axis tide goes up to +3. So that's the nuance of the rule. It's not hard to follow if you read the rules, but trying to explain it without the rules is a little odd. Which means if we fail to take Metz, we only stay at +2 because we would have control of 3 green strategic hexes, but we'd still lose a point for Metz, and that would leave us at +2. The counter stays at Allied Crusade, and the Germans lose the scenario. If we were to take control of Metz, that would make it go to the +3 box, and we would flip this to Axis tide and enable the victory. So as it relates to the overall scenario situation, pick up the camera here and get us back over. We really do need to take basically all locations of importance in this scenario. We need Oslo, we need Metz, which currently has Maginot Fort in it, along with some strength. We need Brussels, we need Paris. So we really need to capture all 4 important locations in the scenario in the 5 turns given to us as the Germans to win. That's the real calculus for victory. So I felt it was needed to explain that in case you weren't sure how we got to those numbers or exactly why the Allied Crusade marker is in the 1 BP space. You need to look at, the whole situation that we're tracking for the scenario. Okay, well, with that, now let's start getting into the German turn. Okay, so getting things underway, we're going to be playing this card. You can see there's a German mobilization card requirement. We will have played that already, I guess, from this scenario's perspective. And the very first thing we're going to do is the option card segment, which has here an either choice. So I guess it's one or the other. We're going to select a target minor country. We're going to apply declare war or do a diplomatic incident. I feel like the diplomatic incident die rolls could maybe give us something we don't want. I want to be real clean with this and just say we're going to apply declare war. And so I might have already mentioned this, but if not, just know that in this game, there is a distinction that Belgium and Holland are treated as one country rather than separate, and Denmark and Norway are treated as one country, not separate. And so our target minor country here will be Denmark, Norway, Norway, and we're doing declare war. What that does when you declare war is now they're active, and we would decide who they align with. There's a set priority list here, but the simple version is that they align with the Western powers, right? We don't need to get too crazy about that. Then we look at their force pool. Now, I almost got confused because there's this unit in the force pool for, it says DMK. I'm like, oh, Denmark, is that their unit? Well, they're Danemark, which is apparently a minor country that Germany could put into the game via a puppet government in Copenhagen, I guess, or something along those lines. It's not actually the unit that we would be using here. We go look and see that there's this DN reserve unit here. In Denmark, not Denmark, Denmark hyphen Norway. So this is the one unit. Now, because it's a reserve unit, it goes into the Western Power Force Pool, and it does not have, basically they're not going to get the benefit of a mobilization roll. So what ordinarily occurs here is you put the reserve units in the force pool, they may get other units onto the map, and then you roll a die for mobilization, and they may get additional steps to flip over to the two-step side of the unit if that's a factor. For Denmark and Norway, though, they just get the reserve unit. That's it. So there's no additional steps on the map. So going into the rest of the turn, just to keep in mind, because I almost got this wrong. I almost put that reserve unit in Oslo thinking, oh, they activate, they get a unit. No, and this is maybe not too dissimilar from World in Flames, where in World in Flames, they may or may not have units at start, and then there are reserve units that could show up later. Basically, that unit will come onto the board from the allies, Western allies, if we don't get into the two cities of importance for Denmark and Norway. We need to capture Copenhagen, and Oslo. Those are the two cities in Denmark, Norway. We need to capture both to achieve a victory there. Now, there's also, I'll just say, like, technically, the scenario does not include Narvik in the north, though we could optionally include it. I'm just going to leave it out. I don't care. But we need to get those two cities, and we need to do it all in the Axis turn in order to be sure that we're conquering Denmark, Norway, and that those reserves don't come in and disrupt the rest of our timeline we need to make ground against the Allies. So that's kind of going to be the thing we're going to focus on here. But the very important thing is, again, before we even look at getting the rest of these steps onto the map, we declare the war. The unit doesn't get placed, but we need to be prepared to get in here and do the thing. So now we look at the replacement segment. We're going to get 1 armor step and 4 infantry steps. And I'm going to have to double check this, but I believe I have to use 2 infantry steps to build this unit that's in our force pool, which is the airborne unit. So this is our Fallschirmjäger. On the back is an airdrop marker. So we use these to basically drop into enemy territory and do various things. But we need to build this guy, but I believe he's considered an elite unit. And he has a delay stripe too, which we need to watch out for. So that's going to introduce some new rules that we're going to diligently talk about as we go to execute this. I'm reasonably confident the Allies are not going to be able to use a support marker to contest this, but I'm going to have to double check that. I think it's just too far out of range for their Air Force marker to do anything. So I'm reasonably confident the Germans should be able to just cleanly take Denmark and Norway, and I'll say probably much easier than it is in World in Flames, where you really need to get a lot of stuff right. You really need to have prepared properly to execute this. Here, I think this may be pretty straightforward. So let me take a look at the replacement stuff and get them onto the board and make sure I get the cost right for the paratrooper unit. Okay, so I've placed our 1 armor and 4 infantry steps for our card, and you'll note that we did put the 1st Airborne here. First Airborne, God. The 1st Fallschirmjäger here in Hamburg, which is, I think, the nearest place that I can reinforce at. Yeah. So that took 2 infantry steps. So then what we would have left is 1 armor and 2 infantry, and I went ahead and just I plucked them in here. I'm not sure which is like closer, which would be better. Maybe I put these guys in Berlin, and then they go this way. I don't know. Maybe I'll just put them in Berlin, and that'll have to work. So that takes care of our replacement segment. So the seasonal phase is over. Now, I will say, as we start to move into the next bit, that if I were playing with Narvik on the map, like in the scenario itself, this might change my support marker decisions, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it out, and we'll just follow this through. But now we get to the support segment. As I've mentioned in previous videos, this tends to be one of the more complicated segments because you really need to think about, like, what am I going to do? Given we're at war with Denmark and Norway, and yes, technically we are at war with France, but attacking the Maginot Line doesn't seem like a grand idea. It's really going to be all about Denmark and Norway and what can we do to operate against them. So, a couple of things. We have a subunit as the Germans. I don't see the need to use it yet. I'm more concerned about let's see, how is this going to work? The additional reinforcements that may come on over the course of the turns for the Commonwealth, and I'm going to wait to use my sub later, because right now I don't think the sub does us a lot of good. And then we're going to probably put our troop convoy out, but it's going to be a supply convoy. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then what we'll do also is start to look at doing airdrops and stuff when we get to that stage of the game. But we're also, I should point out, going to have a blitz marker, and to make all of this work, we're going to need to put a blitz marker somewhere around here to get to have happen what we need to have happen. So I don't need to put that there yet. Technically, I need to play my other support markers, but just to give you a sense of how we're going to set up this combat, we can cleanly take Copenhagen and Oslo without much fuss, and there's really not a whole lot, I don't think, that the Commonwealth can do to stop us. I need to double check what would happen if they try to deploy their support markers to stop, and they can't stop the convoy necessarily. So we don't need to worry too much about that, but I might not even need the supply convoy. I guess I'm not sure. This is the stuff I kind of need to think through. But yeah, so I need to kind of think through the order of operations here. Because what would really be a bummer is if, like, we didn't use our subs, the British used their surface fleet, and then kept us from being able to execute our airdrop activity, and how much supply matters. So we're going to, just to tell you the preview, getting from, this guy's going to get into Copenhagen, going across a strait, with a road. This is just a quick, boom, boom into Copenhagen, one and done. This guy's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is where we start looking at the airdrop, and they're going to drop, into here, I think, is where we would want to go. And then we would have him do some reserve movement to get into Oslo, and that would kind of seal the deal. But I'm not sure what else, like, may be the tricky parts of it. It's going to be like, do you have to be in supply to do certain actions? And that's what I need to double check. I definitely don't want to get it wrong, because if I get it wrong, that could be a problem. I also want to make sure I'm playing the Allied support markers as optimally as I can hope to, because they only have so many support markers as well. And technically, as the Allies, I do want to watch out in case the Germans try to make some kind of sea lion attempt. I'm not really sure how that would look like here, but it's feasible that we could try it. So I need to keep both those things in mind as we're playing with these markers. And is it worth chancing a sea lion to try to stop Norway from falling? Well, probably not. So let me double check how the cup game goes with the support markers, and when I come back, maybe what we'll have done is we will have placed all the support markers and be well on our way to executing our operational movement There'll be a little bit of reorging down here to get these guys in whatever shape I can get them in, but that's going to be pretty minor stuff. Okay, I have a pretty solid idea of how this is supposed to work, but I'm gonna record the support marker placement. I'm gonna play through to basically the end of the axis player turn, and then I'll stop the video because I really want to talk through this. And for those who've been watching the series and providing rules help, I need a sanity check because I'm finding two sets of statements that feel like they don't make this possible. But I've looked, and there's a thread in Board Game Geek where somebody pulled off a Denmark-Norway knockout, and it seems like they did the efficient thing, but I'm worried about the rules wording, and I need a sanity check. So we're going to run it through. First things first. We put the German supply convoy in the North Sea. We can't do the Baltic because all of this is part of the North Sea here. So, supply convoy. We're going to need that because our airdrop marker will turn into a German core if it's in supply. And that's really going to be the question that's going to come up here as we get going. So, keep that in mind. For the blitz marker, we stick it right here. So that a unit adjacent will be in blitz range, and that's really the main thing that we're worried about for the moment. Okay. Are we going to use any other markers? Right now, I don't think I need to, but we'll see. How about that? Now, if we were going to do reorg here, there's not a lot to show. I can get another armor, but I don't actually have the armor units present to turn into the units that we care about. So this is really more, do we get any? Yeah, we'll do the flip up and get a core there, and then I think we can do the same right here. So building these guys up. Speed may not be the main thing I'm worried about for this one. I think we just want to punch in our forces as strong as we can, so we'll do that. Okay, so now we're going to do operational movement. Again, we see Copenhagen. We see 1, 2, 3, 4. We get up to here. That's all fit well and good. We might send these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, no, that's not right. 1, 2, 3. That's as far as he'll be able to go. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 is fine. 1, 2. Actually, we'll stick him right here. Perfect. All right. So that's operational movement. So far, so good. Now we do our blitz segment, and the way this works is we say, okay, Fallschirmjäger, you are going to become an airdrop 2 hexes away. So 1, 2, and we drop in Stavanger, and that's the first part of the blitz segment. And then there's a landing thing. Now, I'll point out, the Commonwealth can't really contest the supply convoy. On their turn, they can send out a fleet, and that might cause these ports to get screwed up. But here's the challenging thing. When I look at this, the question is whether or not that airdrop marker is in supply. Now, it is by the definition of the rules, An airdrop marker, and we'll zoom in a little bit just to help make sure we're focused on the right thing here. An airdrop marker in a port makes it an open port. So I'm going to have to reference the rules here a little bit under the glossary. Open port is a port hex containing a friendly ground unit, airdrop, detachment, or logistics marker. Okay, so it is a port hex, sure is, with a airdrop marker in it. So it's an open port, fair enough. We also have a supply convoy that is currently uncontested. So we would be tracing supply from Kiel or whatever, I guess even Hamburg. We can trace just fine to the port, which means the airdrop marker is at least in theory in supply. But here's, I guess, what I'm not sure about, and I think this is which case takes precedent. When I look at the supply rules, and I gotta find the exact thing, under 10.2.3, there's the 4th paragraph. A supply line cannot be traced into a hex containing a city and or port in an enemy country, and this is an enemy country, unless it is under friendly control. So the question is, does the port currently count as under control? So this is going to be like, can we trace supply into the hex? Well, we need to control it if it's an enemy port. So what's the definition of control? We'll go back to the glossary. Somewhere I will find it. All right, control. We care about access control. So the first priority is it's the final victory point check. Well, it's not, so we skip past that. Priority 2, the hex contains an axis ground unit, detachment, logistics marker, or nationalist capital marker. Well, none of those apply because this is not yet a ground unit. It is an airdrop marker, but that's not included. And then the next priority is priority 3, the hex is an active Axis country or one of its dependents, or in a conquered allied minor country or one of its dependents. But this country isn't conquered yet. So here's the rub. If we cannot trace supply to the airdrop marker, then it cannot do the landing procedure, the airdrop landing, which is rule 4.1.4. If it's not actually supplied, then it can't turn into a ground unit. If it is supplied, right, what we would be doing is we exchange the airdrop marker. So we send this to the delay box. Then we place a core right there, right? And then now we'd be for sure in supply, but again, we can't make this exchange unless it was already supplied. So that's the question. Were we in supply? And then the capstone for this, in terms of finishing this out, is we finish our combat phase, and let's just assume for a second we don't bother to do any other attacks anywhere else. During reserve movement, we are not in enemy zones of control or anything like that. We would simply walk into Oslo, and when we reach the conditional event segment, we would find that the minor country, both of its cities, are controlled by the Axis, and that would trigger its conquest. So, before I go too much farther into this playthrough series, I need help. I need someone to help me understand. Was our airdrop marker in supply or not? If we just go with the idea that by the virtue of that marker being there, it makes it an open port and we can trace supply to an open port, then great. However, the supply line restriction rules indicate we can't trace supply into a hex that is a city or a port of an unconquered country. Now, some of this, in my head, I'm like, well, wait a minute. how could you ever invade, navally invade a country unless you could trace supply through a controlled port? So I just don't know. I don't know. I need someone to help me understand and confirm that. If it happens the way that I just played it, right, this is how we do it. We get a supply marker out there. We don't worry about Narvik. Maybe in a full campaign, we'd be using our subfleet to do something that would allow us to eventually get to Narvik. Here, we're just trying to get supply into this port. When we send our paratroopers there, they get turned into a normal corps, or we exchange them for a normal corps, and they kind of walk and force their way into the capital of Norway, and we're in Copenhagen, and bing, bang, boom. We've taken care of that, which would net us 1 strategic hex, and having had taken care of that, we could even lose supply, and these guys would still be able to sit in here, all good to go. So that's the question, guys. I need someone to help me out. Please let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going to wait to do more in this series until I can get a concrete answer, because if I have to redo this part, then I would certainly look to do that. How else might we do this invasion? Well, we have air forces, and air forces can cause the placement of our beachhead marker, and this would allow a different sort of line of attack, where what we would probably do is do some sort of landing invasion in one of these hexes, and then do something similar, but we would be leveraging a beachhead to do it. And that might be the more correct way to conduct this offensive. So to me, that's really the open question that needs to be determined. How would we do this? Is there another way to do this, or is this the most efficient way to do it? Happy to do it a different way if this was not allowed. So again, really want that clarity. We'll see you in the next video, guys. I need an answer. So thanks for watching. Take care. Keep gaming. See you soon. Okay, actually, before we end the video, right, I was uploading this video to YouTube before I had to stop. Supply line is traced from the hex containing the counter. Do not count the hex containing the counter itself. Okay. So this is the last part that matters. If we don't have to count, so just reversing time for a second, if we said the airdrop was here, we're tracing supply through the North Sea, we have the supply coming. If we don't count this hex, and then we don't need to, because the stipulation on supply line restrictions is a supply line cannot be traced into a hex containing a city and or port in an enemy country. But we're tracing supply out of the hex, right? So then all of what I showed here should be legal, right? Or maybe not. So I guess the question remains the same. Is this the right way to interpret the rules? With this added fragment of the idea here that because you trace supply from the counter, from the marker, from the unit, we get around the supply line restriction of not truly controlling this port, just being present, but we can trace supply. We're not counting the hex the counter is in itself for the supply line. We're really just counting the fact that the unit is in an open port. Control doesn't matter because we're not counting the hex itself. We're not tracing supply into the uncontrolled port, but it's still an open port, and we can trace supply back to Hamburg. Is that right? I don't know, but I'm thinking maybe that is right, and now we're fine. But I need the sanity check, guys.